Welcome, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's presentation, the Welcome Collaborative Supporting Internationally Trained Physicians who are newly licensed in Nova Scotia. Before we begin our presentation today, we would like to begin with an acknowledgement that N4 is located at CHIO, which is located in Ottawa, Ontario. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia, and we honor them and this land. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We also honor all First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. My name is Colleen Drake. I am N4's Project Engagement Coordinator, and I will be hosting and moderating today's presentation with my colleague and co-host, Andrew Tomeyer, Education Coordinator, who will be monitoring the Q&A box for us today. I am now pleased to introduce you to today's presenters, Rhonda Kirkwood, George Mbara, and Priya Patel. Presenters, I was going to ask you to turn on your videos, but you're one step ahead of me, and fantastic, welcome. I'll just do some quick intros. Since 2016, Rhonda Kirkwood has been the Director of Physician Performance at the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Nova Scotia. Previous to the CPSNS, she worked at the IWK Health Centre in Halifax within the Department of Interprofessional Practice. She has her master's in rehabilitation science from McMaster University and an undergraduate degree in kinesiology from the University of Waterloo. Rhonda also has a clinical background in chiropractic with fellows in clinical and rehabilitation studies. She was previously Assistant Dean of Professional Education at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College of Toronto. Rhonda currently oversees the Welcome Collaborative program, an orientation program focused on providing education and supports for internationally medical graduates. George Mbara is the program manager for the Welcome Collaborative. He holds a PhD in international relations from the University of KwaZulu-Natal from South Africa, where he also served as a postdoctoral research fellow with the discipline of criminology and forensic studies. He also lectured at the Center for General Education at Durban University of Technology, South Africa, during this period. As a new immigrant, he understands the plight of physicians trained outside of Canada, and he is passionate about supporting these newly licensed physicians in Nova Scotia to integrate successfully into the provincial healthcare system. George is an educationist, a researcher, a conflict resolution expert. He has participated in many local and international conferences, seminars, and symposiums where he delivered papers and participated in various capacities. Priya Patel is the administrative assistant for the Welcome Collaborative. Priya is from India and possesses a bachelor degree in homeopathic medicine. Her passion for healthcare prompted her to move to Canada, where she pursued a postgraduate certification in healthcare administration. She currently resides in Nova Scotia with her husband, and she enjoys spending her weekends soaking in the beauty of the lovely beaches of Nova Scotia. We are all extremely jealous. I just have a few housekeeping slides to run through. So today's session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our N4 platform. We will share this with you as soon as it becomes available. Should there be any technical difficulties during the presentation, we will inform you with details for an alternate makeup session. I would like to take a moment to introduce you to the platform features to help enhance your participation and this experience. As usual, throughout today's session, We invite you to write your questions in the Q&A window. We know that sometimes many of you might have the same questions or be interested in a particular response. Today, you have the option to upvote your question. Please upvote questions you're interested in hearing the answer to, and we will prioritize those questions for our speakers. And with that said, let's jump right into today's presentation, and I'll pass the virtual podium over to our presenters. Take it away, Rhonda. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. And Priya, will just have you share, our presentation. And while we're setting up there, I just want to say I'm absolutely delighted to participate in this webinar and to have this conversation across the country and showcasing our new program, the Welcome Collaborative, supporting physicians new to Nova Scotia. And so what I'd like to do first is do our land acknowledgement. So I'll have the next slide. So our office is here for the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Nova Scotia is located in Bedford, Nova Scotia, just outside of Halifax. And we acknowledge that the college, our college, is situated in the Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. We are all peace and friendship treaty beneficiaries, and we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and work in solidarity with the Mi'kmaq. We also recognize the contributions and legacies of the of the African Nova Scotian people who have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. All right, so thank you for that, and we'll get started. We do have a lot to discuss, but I'd like to just provide a bit of an overview on what we intend to cover today in this webinar. I'll provide a little bit of a background in terms of how we developed the Welcome Collaborative, the orientation program, and what prompted it. The program objectives, our organizational partners. Priya will discuss the curriculum that we've developed over time. It's evolving. Our learning management system that we have recently developed, as well as the distinct website that we intend to incorporate. George will discuss the program evaluation early results that we have captured since inception of our program, and then talk about our future direction in terms of future sessions that we're going to be offering. Next slide. All right, so a little bit of background. I know across the country there we're experiencing challenges with access to healthcare, not just with physician shortages, but also other allied health professionals across the country. And so here at the college, we work closely with our organizational partners, such as the Nova Scotia Health, Doctors Nova Scotia, the government, in terms of supporting and encouraging physicians from around the world to come to Nova Scotia. And as a regulator, we definitely value what internationally trained physicians can offer. Along with that, oftentimes physicians come to Nova Scotia, they're very interested in practicing, but they still, as of yet, have to get Canadian certification and pass those examinations. And we do have license types and pathways to licensure that allow a physician to actually practice while they work towards certification. Recently, we've changed our pathways. Before we required that each physician had to pass their certification exams. For many physicians around the world are mid-career physicians, and the thought of going back to challenging entry-level exams to practice is very daunting. And so we have new pathways that really rely on our supervisors or other physicians who are currently in practice to supervise and assess newer physicians towards an ongoing license, a long-term renewable license that doesn't necessarily require certification. This is all brand new. In order to support that, we felt that if we were going to assess physicians, even within early days, 6 months, and make a decision on their license, that it would be appropriate to have some level of solid orientation to set our physicians up for success, because the systems are different from other countries, as well as the cultural context of Canadian healthcare system, patient-based care, in collaboration with teams, et cetera. So, at that point, we decided we really do need to develop and call upon our partners to develop a curriculum to ensure that physicians are practicing safely and providing effective care, which is really the mandate of the college and how we got involved. So the notion is, can we work all together to attract, recruit, and retain? And I think that physicians feel welcomed and supported. We know for sure, especially within the realm of supervision, that providing that support is very much appreciated by new physicians. And so we basically work towards developing the physician orientation program. And in order to do that, our first step, which was a year and a half ago, we contracted out a research company to really understand where the gaps were in terms of knowledge and understanding. So we did qualitative research with physicians who, over the last 5 years, who went through a very similar process. So physicians trained outside of Canada who had been on what we call a defined license towards a full license in the province, and really ask them where were your challenges, and what, if we were going to develop a curriculum, what would you ensure we include? So that helped to inform our curriculum. Next slide. So here's our brand new, but it's not so new anymore, it's about a year old, our Welcome Collaborative logo, creating that physician orientation program so we can be identified as a distinct program beyond the college. That was important to us. So next slide. So just giving you some higher level, what does the physician orientation program involve? Really, what's its vision and mandate? Really, it's about welcoming physicians trained outside of Canada to Nova Scotia, understanding it's not just us as the regulator running this program, it's our partner organizations as well. So really providing that welcoming experience, with the focus of the program to offer education and support and orientation to their new practice environment. The objectives are to provide orientation to deliver safe and effective care, to improve retention of our physicians trained outside of Canada. And you'll notice that we use the term physicians trained outside of Canada, international medical graduates, all of the same notion. So improve retention of physicians that achieve independent long-term licensure in Nova Scotia, and to also improve the confidence of supervisors and physicians who work with our internationally trained physicians, and to address gaps identified by our physicians trained outside of Canada, and in ensuring that we're really helping fill in information to set them up for success, especially as they transition into a new practice location and practice environment. You know, that's extremely important. So on to the next slide. So when doctors feel welcome, when they feel settled and supported, it may just help them stick around a lot longer. It's from Dr. Akindele, a physician within Nova Scotia. So it's been warp speed. We were thinking about this idea back in 2022, April, May. There was a call to action meeting where we invited all of our partners, our organizational partners around the province, those who are very much involved with physicians. So whether it be the Nova Scotia Health, Doctors Nova Scotia, ISANS, which is an immigrant settlement program, and various others, and I'll talk about that. But we had a full afternoon meeting to discuss the importance of how can we move this forward. And so it was agreed by all partners that this would be a very important thing to launch a physician orientation program, a plan. So we decided in person is the way to go. And we decided on a 3-day period of time. So we had a soft launch in October of 2022, where we had 8 physicians attend, newly licensed, and connected that to our new policies around support for supervision and licensure in the province. And we evaluated that. By November, we were able to provide complete a grant. The government, so Department of Labor, Skills and Immigration, actually funded a 3-year program for us. So this is a fully funded program, which is great. And we've set up a lot of deliverables, and so far so good. In 2023, we'll be having 4 3-day sessions spread across various timeframes, and George will talk about that. And then we have also developed an advisory council. And our advisory council is made up of 6 individuals. Some are physicians who've had lived experiences. Some are physicians trained outside of Canada who've been here for a while. Also representatives from Dalhousie University, and then of course government as well. So really to help look at the curriculum, and as it evolves and the needs change, that they can provide us with direction and counsel around how to ensure that the program is really meeting its mandate. And it's an additional opportunity for discussion as well as consultation. In April and June of 2023, we had 2 further which were well attended. And in Nova Scotia, we're a small province, so we do have small numbers, I will say. Our physician population is 3,000. And so every year we might get between 50 to 60 physicians trained outside of Canada. So our numbers are small. And so recently we also had a stakeholder luncheon, and we would call that a partner luncheon. And that was an opportunity to really share the early experiences and talk about some of the pain points that our physicians have indicated to us. So again, here's an example here of our a series of who we're partnering with. So we have Doctors Nova Scotia. They have a physician support program and a mentoring program, which is really important. They also are part of the curriculum. We have ISANS, the Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, an extremely important group. Again, when we talk about settlement resources, very much of interest to our new physicians. The government of Nova Scotia Health, our prescription monitoring program for controlled substances, and there's lots involved there. So providing information on that. We have a recruiting company that really helps if we have physicians who have spouses, family members who are looking for employment, to ensure that we're really culturally respectful and trying to include that diverse workforce. They're an excellent resource for us. Dalhousie University, our billing program, MSI, and then the CMPA, the Canadian Medical Protective Association, very important set of conversations that are brought forward as well. So I will hand over now to Priya, who will talk a little bit more about the specifics of the program. Thanks.
Rhonda. Now I'll further discuss about the eligibility for the orientation program. So the Welcome Collaborative Orientation Program is only available to those physicians who are newly licensed and are trained outside of North America, that is Canada or the United States. This group includes NIV defined licenses. These physicians got a provisional or defined license and had to undergo supervision. The other group is those internationally educated physicians trained in family medicine who have to undergo practice-ready assessment and have been granted a defined license at the end. And lastly, the physicians who were trained in family medicine and got a full license through CFPC reciprocity as they were trained in countries like Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and United Kingdom. And in short, this program is not intended for those physicians who have trained or got their education in Canada or United States and those who require remediation. Talking about the orientation participants, we have held 3 sessions till date. The October 2022 session, as Rhonda said, was a pilot session, and 8 physicians participated in that. We welcomed 20 physicians in the April session and 6 physicians in the June session. In total, 34 physicians participated, and they are currently practicing in different communities across Nova Scotia. Here is a picture of the participants. We have clicked pictures with all our participants at each session. The first picture on the top right corner is of the October 2022 participants. Dr. Gus Grant, the CEO of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Nova Scotia, is standing in the middle, and Rhonda Kirkwood is standing last second on the far left. The bottom 2 pictures are from the April as well as the June session. Now diving into the orientation topics, our aim is to deliver content that will not only help the physicians to successfully practice medicine in Nova Scotia, but also to include content that will help them as well as their families integrate in the communities where they would be practicing. We have few experienced physicians come and talk about the patient-centered care, informed consent, drug names, sick notes. We have ISANS, the Immigrant Service Association of Nova Scotia, talk about the resources and settlement supports that are available for these physicians and their families as they are newcomers to Nova Scotia. Dr. Gus Grant talks about the college's professional standards and guidelines and navigate through the complaints process. We have 5 internationally trained physicians come and share the lived experience with our participants. we have various partner organizations come and talk about their roles and the services they have to offer to these physicians. We have Nova Scotia Health, NSPMP program. Representatives from the MSI billing, Doctors Nova Scotia, come and brief these participants. We recently have included Dalhousie Faculty of Medicine to come and explain about the process of getting faculty appointments for those physicians who want to pursue their academic career. So our orientation curriculum is mainly derived and guided by the feedback we receive from the participants and the advice from the advisory council, and it will continually evolve. Here's a glimpse of the orientation about how those in-person session looks like. The first picture is Dr. Joan Evans facilitating the communication skills workshop. And the second one is where Dr. Emmanuel Ajuon is presenting virtually from Cape Breton. Dr. Ajuon is an excellent example of a successful physician who came to Canada on a defined license and got a full license and is currently practicing in Cape Breton. He is involved with various partner organizations and is helping newly trained, internationally trained physicians in whatever way he can. We have consulted with Brightspace and are developing a learning management system for our participants, and we call it the Learning Portal. The purpose of this portal is to act as a repository of information for the participating physicians. All the materials that were shared with the participants in the 3-day orientation, the presentations that were used by the presenters, as well as any other resources that might be helpful for them to integrate into the system, would be available on the portal. The physicians can download this files and they can save it for their future reference. The other purpose is to stay connected with these physicians beyond the 3-day orientation period. This platform will act as an interactive component and will foster two-way communication, where we will be checking on the physicians on a timely manner about how they are doing. Are there any challenges that are still present? And they can reach back to us should they require any assistance. And lastly, this portal will be utilized in case of bad weather or emergency, where we won't be able to have an in-person orientation session. The portal will help us to switch easily to the whole orientation session to online. To be noted, only those physicians who are licensed and are eligible to attend the Welcome Collaborative will get enrolled to the learning portal, and the physicians will have an access for 1 year, and it will not be available to general public or audience. The learning management system will be introduced to the September session cohort, and it's in the final stages of its development. Now, the notion of the pre-session survey came in April 2023, and the idea was to better know the composition of the participants to deliver the curriculum effectively. We have collected data regarding race and demographics, which was voluntary. We had included 5 mandatory questions like previous country of practice, years of practice, challenges faced in settling in Nova Scotia, and many more. This information that we collected helped us to understand the composition of the audience as well as the needs of all the physicians. We shared this information with our presenters right before the session so that they can tailor their presentation as per the needs of this cohort. We have collected information for 26 physicians till date. Some of the information that we have collected in the pre-session survey are shown here. As you can see in this chart, a major chunk of physicians were practicing in United Kingdom prior to moving to Nova Scotia. We have Dr. Simon Bonington, who comes and presents at the orientation, who himself moved from United Kingdom and is practicing in Nova Scotia since many years. He talks about the differences in the healthcare system in United Kingdom and in Nova Scotia, and also about the differences in the drug names and writing sick notes. We also asked the physicians about the years passed since graduating from the medical school. And as you can see from here, that most of these physicians are practicing on an average of 11 to 13 years, and they are middle-aged physicians who are competent in practicing medicine and might not require much support from our end. what we feel is that they might require more support in understanding the landscape of healthcare in Nova Scotia and to integrating in the system in the communities where they would be practicing. We also asked the participants about their expectations from the Welcome Collaborative program, and some of their responses are listed here. As you can see from the slide, most of the physicians are interested in knowing the landscape, that is, roles of various organizations that are active in Nova Scotia and the settlement supports that would make their transition easier into the communities where they would be practicing. We are also developing a Welcome Collaborative's own distinct website, and the work is under progress. Currently, the information on the Welcome Collaborative and all other details are housed on the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Nova Scotia's website. We are aiming to launch the Welcome Collaborative website for the September cohort and might be running in the end of the August or early September, and it will have a lot of resources that will be useful for our internationally trained physicians. Now, I will ask George Mbara, the program manager of the Welcome Collaborative, to discuss further the program evaluation.
Thank you so much, Priya. And hello, everybody. Good to have you here. It was Socrates, the philosopher, who once said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And for us in the Welcome Collaborative, one of the integral parts of our program is the program evaluation. This helps us to know if we are striking the right chords. It helps us to know if we are meeting the needs of our physicians. It helps us to know things we are doing well, things we are not doing well, and areas that need to be improved upon. And for us to collect information on this, we normally administer an online questionnaire to our participants, the presenters at the various events, as well as the guests or the observers at the various rotation events that we normally hold. And information we collect from these group of persons helps us to continually develop our program so that we keep on meeting the needs of our physicians. Remember, the program is it's a work in progress. We are not yet there, and they say Heraclitus says, the philosopher says, change is the only permanent thing. So we'll keep evolving as times and needs may arise. Yes. Next slide. So, like I noted earlier on, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Nova Scotia, that's our college here, contracted narrative research to help us in collecting this data and preparing a report for our physicians or the orientation, every orientation that we hold. And they have been contracted or commissioned to conduct this post-session or survey report from 2023 to 2025, which is the first phase of our pilot of our program. We hope this program is going to be a permanent one. So for the first phase of this program, that's 2023 to 2025, they have been commissioned to help us collect data after every orientation session to help us tailor our presentation to the needs of our internationally trained physicians. And this information is collected from the physicians themselves, the participating physicians themselves, the presenters at the various orientation sessions, as well as the observers. And basically, the areas we cover include the general event, that's the general orientation, the presentations and the content of the presentation, as well as the presenters themselves want to know how well was their presentation, how were they, what do you think about their presentation generally? So want to hear the participants speak about the presenters themselves. And then the length of the event, was it 3 days sufficient? Was it too long? Was it too short? What about the specific time allocated to particular presentations? Were they appropriate or was it too short? Do you need more time for those presentations, as the case may be? And then the venue, was it convenient for you? As well as we also check about the delivery formats. Perhaps would you prefer we move this session to online, or do you prefer we move it in person so that you can interact one-on-one with the presenter and with the content? So these are basic things that we collect during our evaluation. Next slide. So like I said earlier on, now for our evaluation, we normally collect information, and the methodology for our reporting is as follows. The data is collected or gotten from the our data is gotten from the participants themselves, which is very important because our program is participant-centered. Then the presenters as well as the observers. And every session, those who presented or who participated or who observed the session are normally invited to participate in this survey. Usually we administer our questionnaires on the last day of the orientation. That is, say by noon, shortly before we round up for the day. We tell them now the orientation, we have distributed some surveys to your boxes. Please do well to respond to them as best as you can. And then because it helps us to inform the development of our program. And usually it takes about 11 minutes to complete. So judging from the October session, 2022 October session, the April/June 2023 session that we've had so far, that's the 3 sessions. Generally, we have had, for amongst the participants, we have had about 34 participants so far, and we have invited them to participate in the survey. And out of the 34 that were distributed, 27 surveys were completed, which represents a 79% response rate. Then amongst our presenters, we have had about 47 presenters present in our various orientation sessions. And out of these 47 presenters, 30 of them have completed our surveys, which represents a 64% response rate. Then for our observers, we have had about 6 observers, and out of the 6, 2 have completed the surveys, which gives us a 33% response rate. Now, it is important to note that as these were attempted census rather than probability sample, a margin of error cannot be applied. Our reporting terminology is as follows. Our feedback is normally rated on a 10-point response scale. This is what we normally use, a 10-point response scale. And when we get a score of 1, it indicates not at all. And when we get a score of 10, it indicates extremely or completely. Does you agree with it extremely or completely? You agree with it completely. Then when we get a score of 8 to 10, it usually represents to us highly likely, or it means that that particular item was highly positive. And then when we get a score of 4 to 7, it represents a moderate indication. And when we get a score of 1 to 3, it indicates minimally, that response was minimally or was not properly rated, didn't get a good rating as such. It requires further attention. Next slide. Now, from the items that we have gauged during our orientation, after our orientation, the things we have been able to evaluate, one of the items we evaluated was the overall importance of the event. Let's know if what we are doing is actually important for our physicians. Do they find it helpful to their practice, or do they find it as a waste of time? So from what we have collected so far from the 3 sessions, in 2022 October, the participants rated the importance of the event at 100% importance. And then for the April 2023 session, we had a 93% rating for the importance of the events. And then for June 2023, we also got another 100% rating. I will focus on the participants because, like I said earlier on, they are the focus of our program. So the presenters, although their opinions matters to us as well, but for this presentation, I don't want to bore you with what presenters and observers think about our presentations. So we'll focus on the participants. Next slide, please. Then what about the satisfaction with the event? So from your screen there, you can see the figure on your screen indicates that in 2000, let's look at the mean score. In 2002 October, the participant gave the satisfaction level that we got was 9.0 over 10. And then in April 2023, we got a 9.6 satisfaction rate over 10. And then in June 2023, we got an 8.7 satisfaction rate on a scale of 10. So this is the rate of satisfaction we've gotten from our participants so far. Next slide. Then, importance of the presentation topics. We also want to know the topics we are presenting to you. Are they important? Are they things you need to know? How do you find them? Should we improve upon them? There are things you want us to remove or add, subtract or minus? So from the importance of the presentation topics, this particular figure shows the one that was what we had in June. For example, the medical record keeping, resources and supports available through Doctors Nova Scotia, the professional standards and guidelines of the college and the college complaints process, the Canadian Medical Protective Association, MSI billing, and the patient care. All these presentations received a 100% response rating. And if you can look at your far right there, I don't know if it's my far right or your far right, but the mean score there, you can see from the June 2023 session, the April 2023 session, as well as the October 22 session, you can see the comparative study amongst those response rates that we received on the importance of the presentation topics. And you can tell that they have been very, very, they have struck the right chords so far. Next slide. Then the usefulness of the information overall. We also want to assess how useful were this information to you? How practicable was it? Do you find it useful and something that you can apply to practice when you're at the field? Do you think that this information will be very useful to you? So from what we have collected so far, you can see the mean score in 2022 was 9.3% rating over 10. In April 2023, we got a 9.1 rating over 10. And in June 2023, we got an 8.7 rating over 10. So this shows the level of acceptance that the information they received here are considered very useful to their practice. That's extremely useful and practical. Next slide. There are also other opinions that were engaged during these evaluations. And for example, we also asked them what also wanted to know their perceived value of the events, reasons for the perceived value of the event, what additional event topics they would like us to cover in future, etc. So from what we've gotten so far, these feedbacks helps us inform the continuing development of our program. Next slide. So also during our evaluation, we also allow the physicians to express themselves freely, like tell us what more you want to. Are there any things we didn't cover in this questionnaire that you want to tell us, bring to our notice? And these are some of the quotes we've gotten from our physicians. And you can see from your screen there that the feedback have been very, very remarkable. For example, somebody said, excellent speakers, very relevant topics of discussion. Next slide. And from quotes from the participants, there's one that actually stood out for me, and it reads, I went there a little reluctantly, but ended up absolutely loving it. Great quality presentations and presenters. Really useful to understand how the health system works, including outside of your specialty. Sharing our experiences with other foreign trained physicians was great and comforting. It is also great to see that the college cares about us. It gave me more energy for the future. I think this is the essence of our orientation. We want to energize them, we want to give them enthusiasm, because where your workers are not enthusiastic about what they do, it's a recipe for disaster. So after such orientation programs, and when you see our physicians go to the field, happy physician, happy patient, happy society, everybody's happy. That is the essence of our orientation. Next slide. Now, also, besides the positive feedback we received, we also wanted to know what they liked more of. What more do you want us to add to our orientation sessions? So access to orientation and other resources was one of the things that was identified, meaning that they want to see they want to get access to the materials we cover early enough before they even arrive at the orientation, so they can study ahead of time and prepare more questions. And to enable us address this particular need, our learning management portal will help in solving this problem, because now we have decided that from the moment of their licensure, we now enroll them onto the learning management portal, where they can start accessing resources, materials, webinars, etc. for their own preparation and to help them prepare for their work here in Nova Scotia. Also, to better, on that point that was identified by physicians, is better integration between healthcare organizations in the province. Some of our physicians also complain that information in the province is scattered across various organizations, institutions, everybody doing different things, having different information. I want information on record keeping, I have to go elsewhere. I want this, I go elsewhere. So they have complained that they want to see us how they can have how they can deal with lesser group or lesser people at a time. And to address this particular need, we have decided to, along with our partner organizations, we are trying to see how we can integrate or harmonize these pieces of information into a one-stop point, so that we, for example, in the Welcome Collaborative, want to see how we can be a hub where we can collect information and disseminate to our physicians who are trained outside of Canada. And to a large extent, we are almost achieving this, because when these resources are ready, we are going to upload them to our learning portal and as well as our website. Then more training and support on billing. This is also another area they identified. And to address this particular need in our agenda for our orientation, we have increased the time for MSI billing consistently. It was like in April, it was 2 hours that was dedicated, but in June, we gave it 2.5 hours. And we have also decided that along with the MSI billing team, we want to see if we can also have webinars for our physicians. Maybe because they're very busy people, we say, okay, on a Saturday evening, we can host a webinar for them on particular areas of MSI billing. Perhaps if there's any new innovation, they'll be kept abreast with it. And then the settlement resources. They also, besides the need, the needs they want in practice, they also need other support that is outside of practice. For example, most of our physicians, like you all know, I don't know if you are aware, in Nova Scotia, for example, housing is a serious need, especially for new immigrants. As an immigrant, I came into Canada last year and I had to stay in an Airbnb for 4 months. So from my own perspective, I can imagine what most of these internationally trained medical doctors are passing through. So housing is a critical need in Nova Scotia. And spousal jobs, one will not be focused if a doctor is working in Nova Scotia and the family is in Ontario or outside the country. The person will not be focused in their practice. And then banking and finance issues. So for us to address the housing problem, we have also partnered with our community navigators. We have partnered with the recruiters to see how we can link even the host communities, how they can help us in addressing providing accommodation for our doctors who are trained internationally. If you are a local doctor, you will not understand the pain that others who are trained outside are passing through. And then the spousal job fair, we also had, through our partner organization, the ISANS, that's the Immigrant Services Association of Nova Scotia, as well as the P4G recruiting firm, we are trying to see how we can help our physicians. When they come for these 3 days orientation, we encourage them to bring the curriculum, the resumes of their spouses, those who are still seeking for employment, and will tender it to these partner organizations, and they have discussion with them and see how they can assist them moving forward. The ISAS, for example, offers training and skill development, language development, help them to tailor their CVs to meet various needs and other particular needs as the case may be. Therefore, the banking and finance issues, we have also had meetings or discussions with various banks in our province here, and they are giving us positive feedbacks. You know, it is not easy to grant loan to somebody who is on a work permit. Most of our banks are more comfortable dealing with people who are permanent residents or who are citizens. So to help with this issue, we are trying to see if our banks can also do something for our physicians trained outside of Canada, because these are the ones who come into the country without any credit score. The credit score you've built in UK, in Nigeria, in France, etc., don't count when you come into Canada. So how do you navigate? How do you surmount this challenge? So these are things we are trying to help them. We are not solving these problems. Just a caveat here, we're not solving the problems ourselves, but we are rather trying to serve as a hub, like a signpost in how to address this particular need, because it is beyond our scope. Some of these things can be solved by the government only, can be solved by various organizations. So we are trying to see how we can bring everybody together on a table and discuss ways of helping our physicians. Next slide, please. Then there's also another aspect of our possession surveys or follow-ups. you know, it is not enough to have a 3 days orientation with your physicians. I'm sure you'll be asking, after these 3 days, what happens next? Yes, we also do follow-up with our physicians. And recently, we administered a souvenir for the 8 who were in October, who attended our orientation in October, as well as some other cohorts who didn't attend the orientation, but who were licensed in the province for in maybe the past 1.5 years. We had a survey follow-up survey with them, and the aim of the survey was to know how they were faring, how they were settling into practice, how they were settling into their host communities, and how, if there were any particular things that's with the area they still need attention, they need help with. And we also ask them what is going on well, what's not going on well. Talk to us freely. And overall, most of our physicians who responded to this follow-up survey indicated that they have had good experiences settling down in their host communities and their places of practice. And however, one of the areas they pointed, one of their pain points that they identified was the administrative work, the burden of administrative work. They complained that the administrative work of practicing is too much or is too heavy for them. For example, I remember during the April session we had here, I was talking to a physician from South Africa, and she said to me, my friend, you know what, that the administrative work, that keeping records of your consultation is one of the most difficult parts of this job, that sometimes I stay awake as much as 11, 12 to make sure that I've entered all my records for the day. And another one said that this time that they're using to enter these records is an unremunerated time. So it's difficult for most of our physicians. So these are things that they identified. And most of again, they talked about the referral issues. How do the family physicians refer to specialists? And these issues were discussed during our July luncheon with our partner organizations. We had a luncheon on the 11th of July with our partner organizations where the problems that were identified was discussed in details, and we have been able to have out or reach some agreement on how to ameliorate some of these challenges that we are identified by our physicians. Next slide. So, planning ahead. Just like Rhonda pointed out at the beginning of this session, of this presentation, we run 4 sessions annually. That's for every quarter. And for this year, 2023, we have had 2 sessions already. That is for April. It was supposed to be in March, but we had it in April due to logistic challenges. And then we had the second session in June. And now we are preparing for the 3rd session, which is in September. And the 4th session will be in December. And this will be the cycle in 2024 as well as 2025. Yes, next slide. Yes, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your patience. We are ready to receive any questions, comments, and concerns you want to express. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, collaborative team. That was fantastic. And we do have lots of questions coming in. So let's jump into those. So the questions we can start with are, have you considered providing the orientation to PRA candidates? Any particular reasons they are not included? I can direct that to maybe Rhonda.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So our PRA candidates, actually, we recently discovered they undergo a 5-day orientation, and they also, once completed the PRA, they, in order to move forward onto the defined license, they actually have to attend our 3-day session. So PRA candidates will do attend these 3 days.
Great, thank you for that information. How did you use the models of orientation from other provinces to help to develop your own? And what did you draw from these other programs? What elements and what made them unique? So
well, I can speak to that only because I was here at the very inception, and so interesting. I think we went to the drawing board. We really, although we had new information from different provinces, doing the narrative research qualitative study where we just simply interviewed our own Nova Scotian physicians who went through a defined license and have been practiced for 5 years and trained outside of Canada. That was the the core seed document that we use to inform the curriculum, and with consultation from our partners. So we didn't actually really lean too much on the other MRAs.
Thank you for that. Going to the source, that makes a lot of sense. I do have a comment from one of our attendees, and they just wanted to confirm that they had heard correctly. And they were just referring to 34 IMGs have gone through the PRA Nova Scotia route for 2022-2023, and that this orientation is for those deemed eligible for PRA Nova Scotia. Is that correct? So 34 IMGs have gone through in 2022-2023?
Really important to note the difference between a PRA. So we're not necessarily, we don't run the practice ready assessment program information. We've had 34 physicians go through the program over the last year and a half. Most of those were defined licensees. So physicians who, some had gone through the PRA, some did not go through a PRA. And some have full license. So there's basically 3 different types of cohorts. So that's for clarity. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Rhonda. And then we have, were there community, oops, sorry, my screen just jumped. Were there community members, patients, or healthcare users invited as speakers to share their experience with their doctors? So were there community members, patients, or healthcare users invited as speakers to share their experiences as well as doctors?
Not at this time, but that's a good suggestion.
Okay, fantastic. And then what are the eligibility to apply for programs? And I know you've gone through many of those details, but if you could just sort of do a quick recap for a member, they might have joined a little bit later.
To attend the Welcome Collaborative orientation or to apply for licensure in Nova Scotia?
I don't think they specified.
Or
maybe for the collaborative, Priya, would be
to
great.
attend the program, the physician needs to be on a defined license. They might have undergone the NSPRAP program, the practice ready assessment, or they have got a defined license. And the other group of physicians that is eligible to attend the orientation are the full license family medicine physicians who have been granted reciprocity through CFPC, the College of Family Physicians of Canada.
Perfect, thank you. And is there a cultural competence component in the curriculum?
Yes, yeah. There's a cultural component of the curriculum, and that is taken by P4G, one of our partner organizations, and it's titled People, Culture, and Changing Demographics of Nova Scotia. So there we tell them about the original, how Nova Scotia, the people are populated, the cultural diversity involved, and how to be culturally humble when you are approaching the society, the people here, because you discover that Nova Scotians are very welcoming people, but you don't take people for granted because they're welcoming. So there's that cultural, and to also prepare for culture shocks, things you may see that, oh, it's not done back home, but when you come here, one thing that will shock you the most is that everybody is polite and nice.
Thank you for that. Lovely to hear that about Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
I have a question related to CPSNS regulations for international medical graduates. They understand they're still tight, especially in the language requirements, documents from overseas, etc. How flexible is it to get a license as a general practitioner?
So that is a great question. It is outside of the scope of our work in terms of the Welcome Collaborative, because that relates to licensing element, which again, we literally take the baton from the licensing group and we provide the program. So the best way to get that information is to go on to the college's, the CPSNS website. It has lots of good information under their registration and licensing section, and it outlines the various policies and pathways. And of course, it has a contact us link that if you want specific information, if you essentially registration at cpsns.ca, then actually it's registration, at cpsns.ns.ca, then there will be an agent to contact to give more information on that.
Thank you, Rhonda. And we obviously can share any resources that we've sort of quoted in our presentation today. We do have some additional questions coming in, so just scanning. There we go. Is an IMG who just got the licensed state of medical counsel eligible for the Welcome Collaborative session?
So really, to be eligible for the session, the physician will need to be actually licensed. It is part of the licensure requirement. We didn't want to get too deep into that, but for physicians who fall into the categories that Priya outlined, it's actually a requirement that they attend, almost like a curriculum that they need to attend in order, and it becomes a condition on license. And then once that's complete, they've attended, then that condition gets removed. So literally anyone attending will have had to have been licensed here first. So no, the answer is no, just because you have passed specific exams. If you're not licensed and fall into those categories, then at this time, the program is not available to others outside of that criteria.
Thank you for that clarification. And then obviously some interest here. So how do individuals apply for the next session, the session of September 2023?
Yeah.
Only
Right.
those physicians who are licensed and are practicing in Nova Scotia can enroll in the Welcome Collaborative session. And they have this mandatory condition on their licensure to attend the orientation. And it's us who send them the invites to attend the orientation session.
Perfect. Thank you for making that information available. I do have a question from one of our French-speaking members. So they're just looking for, is there or are there any resources available for French-speaking physicians? Do you collect language data? I can see Priya smiling.
Well, thank you. I think I will speak to that. For now, we don't have room for French-speaking physicians, but I think it's something we can consider moving forward. Basically, Nova Scotia is English Anglophone. So I think, but moving forward, I don't think we've had a physician who speaks French coming for the program.
We did one from France, actually.
Yeah.
But she was able to, her English was good. And so there's 2 languages within Nova Scotia that's acceptable for record keeping, et cetera, which would be English and French. So definitely something to take into consideration moving forward.
Fantastic. And I think that sort of wraps up our questions for today. If there are some additional ones that come in, we will absolutely take those offline. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Rhonda, George, and Priya for taking time to participate in today's discussion. And obviously many thanks to our audience for joining us and engaging with us today. And I'll just pop up our closing slides, and big thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, if we missed any part of today's presentation, or if you'd like to watch the session back, we have recorded it, and we will be making the presentation available in Meeting Place within the week. And any questions will be addressed there. We've also curated several resources related to today's presentation topic, and these will be made available for you. If you are not already, please sign up to become a member of N4, newcomernavigation.ca. There's fantastic resources and learning opportunities. Following today's session, you will be invited to complete a survey to share your feedback. These surveys are very important to us, so please take that time, and we will be sharing the link with you. We do have some upcoming webinars listed on our site, so please attend again. We have our N4 mobile app, and it's obviously available on Apple and Android. You can click on the QR code and go to newcomernavigation.ca/iOS for Android. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at a future webinar. And with that, if there's any last comments from our presenting team, I'll hand it back to you, and then we'll wrap up for today.
Colleen.
Thank you so much. Great
Thank
to
you.
work with you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.